Howdy, before this episode of the show, which is going to be, frankly, all about my race, I want to tell you about what I did immediately after the race.
Well, I did see you collapse onto that lawn downtown Leadville. You drank about 6 bottles of water. I don't know how many pieces of watermelon you had. Maybe a whole watermelon. and they just kept coming. Like more slices of watermelon for Fatty because he needs it right now.
Oh, watermelon with a little bit of salt on it and all the water I could drink. Yeah, all true. But as soon as the hammer came in, you probably also noticed that she and I got back on our bikes and we rode back to the house we were staying at. Fortunately, it was just an easy couple of downhill miles. And then we put our BlendTech blender to work, making, of course, recovery shakes starring Floyd's of Leadville recovery mix. There wasn't even any discussion about this. We didn't even bring it up. We were both craving it. And truly, we've come to rely on this as a must-have item after every big ride. And for sure, Leadville is a big ride.
Man, you guys are disciplined. That's amazing. I mean, most people, if they don't have Breck Epic or Steamboat Gravel after that race, beer is the prescribed recovery drink. But for you guys, the Floyd's recovery mix, chapeau.
Yeah.
What goes into that, by the way?
Yeah, we've got it nailed. So we fill the blender up about halfway with ice, and this is for 2 people. Put in 4 scoops of Floyd's vanilla recovery mix. That's our favorite. 2 scoops per person, and then some chocolate milk. 15 seconds in the smoothie setting, and then I pour Lisa's glass, and then I put in a giant scoop of peanut butter into mine because I really like the taste and the texture and the fact that it kind of helps me not get brain freeze for some reason. Just it buffers the cold a little bit. Another 3 seconds on smoothie, and I've got something that is not just good for me, but I truly love how these taste. I'm in my 50s now, Hottie, and recovery is a way bigger part of my training and racing than it used to be. And I can say I use Floyd's recovery mix after every big ride or hard effort, and I think it deserves, honestly, a lot of the credit for the surprisingly successful day I had on the course this year.
Check out all of Floyd's CBD recovery tools at floydsofleadville.com. Use the code that is FATTY to get a 15% discount. And thanks to Floyd's of Leadville for being the title sponsor of this show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race. How about the 104-mile mountain bike race? That's what it was this year, I think.
105.
105, right. You had the odometer going, not me. The 105-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It is season 4, episode 21 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out. Yes, I've heard that term quite a lot repeated to me in Leadville. Everyone was freaked out for the highest, hardest, and one-day mountain bike race in the country. I'm having fun with this, Fatty. I'm Michael Houghton, Hottie to most.
It's going to be a loose episode, Hottie. I am Fatty. Today, I am more or less hijacking the entirety of this episode of the podcast to tell the story of my day in Leadville. I want to be sure before I begin, though, that I mention Shimano because I would easily otherwise completely forget to mention them in this story.
Why is that Shimano so important?
It is. It's because across the board, Shimano just kind of disappeared from under me. I never had to think about my XTR drivetrain. I never had to think about my XTR brakes. I never had to think about my XTR pedals. I never had to think about my S-Fire shoes. I never had to think about my Griffin saddle. Lisa had all of these things as well and also did not have to think about them during the day. And honestly, that is more important to me than that I didn't have to. She still uses Time ATAC pedals, which honestly have caused me a lot of grief and concern in the past. I don't know if you've ever noticed the way the pins work out of them, but this is not sorry, I'm off track here. I got to get her to change that. Let's leave it at that.
And as another testament to Shimano's reliability, both times you came in to Twin Lakes Alternate, and same with Lisa, I asked, how's the bike? And the bike was always just fine. So thanks again to Shimano for performing on the biggest race day of the lives of Fatty and Lisa. Go to bike.shimano.com to find out more.
So I was not confident, Hottie, when I came into this race. We talked about it many times, and a lot of people asked, how are you going to do? And the answer I gave was always a variation of, I think that I am 9 hours plus or minus 15 minutes. So just use that sort of as a backdrop to all of this. That said, I didn't treat the race like it was not important to me and that it was not serious. I actually emailed Brian Fedema in Cycles of Life about 2 weeks before the race. And I reserved time on the Wednesday before the race for him to go from top to bottom over both of our bikes so that by Thursday morning, we both had perfect, like brand new looking and brand new working bikes, clean, ready to roll with plenty of time so we didn't even have to worry about it. I got to tell you, it is really nice to not be on Friday morning thinking about whether your bike is okay.
Yeah, I think even I have spent way too much time and energy like getting the bike ready. It'd be nice to have somebody just take care of all that and you roll down 6th Street with confidence that, the bike is in perfect working order, as you head for what is a very, very rough day. Now, I circulated the starting line trying to find my racers, and I did find all of you, Rohit included. Managed to recover jackets from Lisa and from Melissa, so I saved those. But you, what happened? I know you went to the start line trying to stay warm, but when I found you, you were ready to race. No jacket.
I had worn my beloved Periodic Brewery jacket, just a nice hoodie, and got nervous as we were getting close to race time and had this concern that if I didn't remember to get rid of it now, that I wouldn't remember to get rid of it at all and would start the race wearing a comfortable fleece hoodie. So I saw someone, made eye contact with a complete stranger and tossed my jacket to her, off on the side of the at the side of the starting line and said, "Here, have a free jacket." And I am happy to say that a week later, over Facebook, she reached out to me and said, "What's your address? I have your jacket." I have no idea how she managed to figure out that it was me, but I'm really grateful. So I got my jacket back. It came to me in the mail. So the folks in Leadville are so nice. Anyway, another thing that I forgot. I am a very forgetful person, as you know personally. I forgot to buy, using the feed, my traditional bonk breaker bar. You know how much I love those things at the starting line. So I actually picked up a Pro Bar. I forget what flavor, but it was really delicious that I ate at the starting line. It was just really good, and a strong recommendation to everyone. Remember to start eating before the race begins, because for the first half hour, maybe even an hour, you're not going to get a chance to eat. Just eat at the starting line.
Yeah, because when do you ingest? I mean, you do have breakfast, I hope, before this race.
For sure.
But it's like at least an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours before, while you're actually, between breakfast time and gun time, right?
Absolutely. It's once I don't look exactly at the clock, but I would say, 90 minutes to 2 hours before the race begins is when I have breakfast, and time elapses, and then you're at the starting line, and it's really easy because of nerves to forget to eat something. Make that part of your plan. Eat something in the last half hour, 15 minutes before you begin the day. It'll help you out so that you don't get into a calorie deficit way before you ever even get to Columbine.
Yeah, so by the time I reached you, you were in full kit, full race kit, ready to go. No Periodic Brewing jacket to recover, and thankfully you got it back. But yep, you were all dressed up, ready for your day at work.
I was, and of course you saw me. You saw me several times during the day. You saw me at the starting line, the finish line, twice in between at the alternate feed zone. So I have a memory quiz for you. How did the gear I was wearing change throughout the day?
Let's see. Mrs. Hottie helped you get rid of arm warmers. And I forget if that was inbound or out. I do remember.
Twin Lakes out.
Out? Yeah. Okay. That's the only change of clothing I remember.
Yeah. And that actually was the only change of clothing aside from the tossed jacket. I was wearing DNA socks, bibs, and a DNA Leadville podcast jersey, along with black DNA arm warmers, which you correctly noted. I had Mrs. Hottie help pull off at about 9:30 in the morning as the day had already started getting warm. And we went from the low of about 40 degrees at the starting line to around 80 degrees at the finish line, at least when I crossed. What else did I do as the day heated up?
Let's see. You probably unzipped your jersey?
And that's actually the point I wanted to make. I did not. I never pulled my jersey zip from all the way up the entire day, from starting line to finish line. As you know, there is a meaningful aero advantage to doing this, and that matters for about 40% of the race where you are on either pavement or on rolling dirt roads.
Yeah, that's true. And plus, you just look better with a zipper up. I think most of us do with our concave chest.
That's true.
When you see somebody's jersey flapping about, though, essentially the rider is pulling a little parachute behind them. You know, if you're going to do that, like unzip it all the way, I guess, and just let it fly. But even then, you know, it is a wind drag. Just checking in with our guy, Josh Portnoy at Silka. He'll tell you about all the losses there with the flapping jersey. Over a long day, that has cost some real watts and real time expended for racers.
No question. And even more importantly, though, is the fact I never felt the need to pull down the zip. I have honestly never had jerseys as good as DNA's at keeping me cool on a hot day. They wick beautifully, and I would say it kept me cooler with the zip up than I would have been with the zip down.
Right. DNA doesn't just make good-looking jerseys. They make really great jerseys that also look good and at a good price.
Yeah. And of course, we're big fans of the fact that they do amazing custom work as well. So stay tuned on that. There is going to be a Leadville podcast jersey with an amazing new, very easy to spot on the course design for 2022.
And of course, you can have your own design made as well. Just go to dnacycling.cc and click a link to learn more or start a custom order. Be sure to tell them the Leadville podcast sent you.
Okay. So I'm going to take you all the way back. I've sort of been to the front, to the end, all the way in between. I'm going all the way back to the beginning. Wave starts. I had a lot less anxiety, a lot less off the start line adrenaline, the grab of brakes as there are a whole bunch of people in front of you in that first little pitch on the pavement 100 feet after you start the race. It put me in, honestly, a great headspace to go up St. Kevin's. And that mattered a lot to me this year, Hottie. I feel like because of the calmness and the reasonably fast, but, with the flow approach that I had to St. Kevin's, that I did a smart climb up Kevin's where I wasn't having to constantly burn tiny little matches to get around people, where I wasn't having to look for gaps to shoot. I just rode with my fellow Green Corral racers and got up there in a really good position. And I felt like I was in a spot to do a really smart race. And that helped me build alliances early too, right? The people I saw in my corral, I was seeing them the whole day. And a good example of that, it was a very strong first-time rider who was really happy to work with me on Hagerman's. As we were going up that dirt road, which was in better shape than I remember it ever being, very few brake bumps, I said, hey, let's take short poles, and then fade left. And between the two of us, without, neither of us were surging off the front, but instead putting in, nice little efforts to bridge from the next group, to the next group, to the next group. And I mean, it's, only a slight exaggeration to say we were cutting through the field like a hot knife through butter. It wasn't our intent. We were just wanting to find, the next group and then work with them. But he and I were faster than other groups because other groups were just, one guy would go up front and then be a hero. Neither of us were being heroes. We really did a fast time. And I was looking at my Strava afterward, and I was within 30 seconds of my fastest time ever on the on that Hagerman's piece, just because I was working with someone who was really doing great work with me. It was great.
I'm not I love Sugarloaf. I've never been a big fan of Hagerman's, mostly because of the washboards. And secondly, because it's absent of what you're talking about. And And at that point of the race, there in years past at least, there hasn't been a lot of cooperation there. And that's probably in part due to the mass start. Like by the time you get there, you're so washed out from fighting up Kevins and getting, over Carter and the fast ascent that you get on the Hagerman and you kind of put your guard down, maybe put your guard up, and you don't do what you need to do and continue to race. I'll go back to the start line real quick. From my viewpoint, my vantage point on the wave starts, it was orderly. It was without, as far as I could tell, without any error. I mean, everyone seemed to move up, move back into place. They sent the subsequent waves off without a hitch. It missed you missed the gunshot. Each wave kind of missed their own gunshot, but that's just going to happen. They got their countdown. Things seem to go off great with the wave starts there at 6th and Harrison. Now, back out on course for you. I mean, you probably didn't ride with strangers the whole day. I imagine it wasn't too long before somebody starts yelling out your name or you recognize somebody on course.
I recognize folks on course, and folks on the course recognized me, which I think was a big part of the great day I had. I mean, people were very encouraging. People were incredibly gracious about this podcast. Not to toot our own horn too much, but there were a few people who said, "Hey, I'm having a great day on this race, and it is because of you and Hadi." And honestly, no one could have given me a nicer compliment than that. Our little show that we've been doing for 4 years now has made a difference in people having a great day on this race that we love so much. As far as friends that I met, Ray Landry, actually, I ran into him. He is someone who I've referred to a number of times on this podcast. He was he's a local guy for us Utahns and a good guy, also one of the coaches at the Camp of Champions. He is much faster than I usually am. And I know he was going for an 8 to 8:15 finish. And I don't know what made me say it, but as I came across him, I was surprised. And I said, "Hey, Ray, step it up." And it was not nice. I realized this as soon as I said it. I'm like, I'm a nice guy. What am I doing? And I don't know. There's maybe just a little bit of race aggression got in there. So apologies to Ray, to whom I was maybe a little rougher than I needed to be. That said, everything went great up Sugarloaf. It is in cleaner condition than I remember it being in a long time. Came down power line. Of course, it was chunkier and due to the rains right before the stage race. And the lines are still forming, but I saw so many flats going down. I was in the green corral, which means that the gold, silver, and red corrals were the only three in front of me, but I saw 9 flats on, because I always count, because I like to keep track in what I would say the front third of the race. So people were definitely flatting. And it was a little technical, but I was just, rode within myself. A lot of people passed me, and everyone to a person, every single person who passed me was really good about making their passes. I love that.
These flats, were they pulled over at the top section of power line, or were they closer to the bottom?
All toward the top. I don't remember seeing anyone at the bottom who had flatted. The bottom half of power line at this point, I would say is, to flat on it, you would really have to go out of your way to either pinch or to, find, a tack or something. Didn't hear anything about tacks this year, did you?
No, it's good. Maybe they did finally put an end to whatever that problem was, but it lasted for a couple of years.
Anyway, yeah, it was always in the top half that all 9 of these flats that I saw were. And
yeah, well, it's been a little rougher up there this year with the rain. So maybe some pinch flats, just sharp rocks.
Yeah.
Stuff can get you up there. Sometimes that stuff happens even before, though, you reach tough sections. That's why I asked, were they at the bottom or the top, where these people pulled over. sometimes flats take a little bit to develop before you start noticing how low you are. And
Yeah.
But more than likely, there was terrain-induced flats up there on Powerline. But that's a lot, 9 for those early waves. And those guys, those folks are riding pretty aggressive too. So there's that as well. So
yeah, absolutely. The fast guys are riding, are really making some aggressive moves. No question that had to do with part of it. But I didn't see anyone who was seriously injured or who had crashed out bad on Powerline, and for that I'm definitely grateful. So I get to the bottom of Powerline, and I want to bring up again, for I think the second time, how smart I am. I make the right onto the pavement, and I know that this is the time for me to start making and start finding a group to work together. And there was someone who was right beside me, and he says, "Well, it's just you and me," and it didn't. Your brain isn't working right. I didn't register what he meant. And he had actually pulled out a gel and was starting to eat. And I knew that you don't want to eat as soon as you turn onto the pavement, because you go uphill for a minute. And suddenly you're like, oh, you're trying to suck down a gel or whatever you're eating. And you're like, oh, this is steeper than I knew. And so I wait for a minute till I crest that one little hill and start working your way toward the fish hatchery. And I realize that I am absolutely, and it is so strange for this to happen in the Leadville 100, but I am by myself. There is no one in eyesight ahead of me, and I am like, well, I can't catch anyone if I can't even see, how far ahead they are. I look behind me, and there's one person behind me, and it is the guy who said, "It's just you and me." And I understand now what he meant. It really was just him and me. So I sat up. I ate while he, caught up to me. And then Hadi, the two of us put on a 2-person pacing clinic, which we referred to as the Alan and Eldon show. It turns out his name was Alan, and he taught me about what a good paceline is. The two of us rotated every, 15, 20 seconds. There was no like, hey, watch your clock or anything, but go for a few seconds. As soon as your power started to drop off at all, you move to the back, and we just rotated through. We didn't catch the next group ahead of us, but I will say that by the time we got to Pipeline, he and I were both perhaps a little winded because we were working hard for each other. But it had a great effect, and that is I pulled into the Pipeline aid station. My timing mat time is 1 hour, 54 minutes. And that's a textbook, I will say, sub-9 pace. But I had been telling everyone I was probably not sub-9, so I was not letting myself believe it.
Well, why not? Why not change your plan right then and there and go, okay, my plan now is to break 9 hours?
It might be just sort of a mental thing I have, which is if I let myself believe that I am doing well, then I am apt to slow down because, hey, I'm doing well. I don't have to work as hard. I feel like I need a carrot. Well, I don't know. Maybe I need more of a stick. There are stick people and there are carrot people. I think I mentally need to give myself the stick. And if I say, you're doing good, I'm not going to go as hard as I should. So, it's sort of race psychology for Fatty here.
Yeah. It's you use the negative energy to help propel you forward. Like, oh, you're not doing that good, and it makes you go faster, right? Okay. Pipeline. Okay. You had an aid station there, and we had crew there, and you did what?
Yeah. Well, I saw Blake, and I saw Melissa's boyfriend, Jeff, and my kids were there, and I did not see them. I don't know why I didn't see them. They were there. They came all this way, and I just blew through a focused, eye of the tiger, call it what you will. I did see them eventually, but and they said they were there and cheering for me. I probably should just say that I saw them, but honestly, I was just going through and in my own head, going as hard as I could. That said, once I got through Pipeline and things calmed down a little bit, I had a fantastic time just riding with different folks, running across different people. It's in between Pipeline and Twin Lakes Dam. It's sort of where any conversations that are going to happen during this race seem to really be happening. And no conversations last very long, but you do start settling in and seeing the jerseys that you're going to be seeing the rest of the day. And I worked together with a number of people throughout. Heard from several listeners who said they were having a good day. You talked a little bit about that before, but it was just awesome to see that I was not the only one who was having a really good day. People were working together. People were eating on a schedule. It was kind of funny, actually. There were a number of times throughout the day that I would hear other people's GPSs chiming, going off, within like 3 seconds or 4 seconds of when mine went off. And I was like, oh, Green Corral pressed your GPS, you pressed your start button the same time I did. And everyone was just being really courteous. Honestly, we have the best listeners. Super friendly sort of a vibe throughout the day. And I think it's worth giving some credit where credit is due. The new race director, Tamara Genlink, the day before in the race meeting, she really hammered on the point that courtesy, friendliness, encouragement need to be an important part of this race. And I think it struck home. I think people listen, and there seemed to be a positivity about this that I found really encouraging. Maybe part of it was also that we're all excited to be back on a race course, right? And so there's some excitement there that we're sharing.
Yeah, as we push this show forward, I think one of the topics we want to circle back to, Fatty, that is the topic of working together, because this can catch pure mountain bikers off guard a little bit. Like, okay, how do I pace line? How does this work? How do I group up? How can I organize a pace line? Can I be the one? Can I initiate this? Do I wait for somebody else? All these protocols. And I think there's some good discussion we can have in future episodes about how to do this race, specifically focusing on this skill, because it's not inherent to mountain biking, but it does come up quite a bit here. And I think you're going to tell us a story here, how it can make or break your day. Like, it can really prove to be a quite valuable skill and one that knocks off a lot of time if you can do it correctly, if you can figure out how to do this. So future episode top, for sure, we'll go in depth on how to do this. I want to ask you one thing here as we're getting near or getting through pipeline, and that is the weather. Now, we know that this day warmed up quite a bit on this, 40 at the start, 80 at the finish. When did you start feeling the day warm up? Was it right here in pipeline? Was it after?
I would say that by the time... I don't remember the day being warm. I wasn't kidding about the DNA jersey being really great at wicking for me. I do remember that when Mrs. Hottie pulled off my arm warmers at the pipeline or at Twin Lakes alternate, that by then I already had pulled down the arm warmers, so they were just bunched at my wrists. So I was, and that's unusual. I generally have them up all the way into mile 40 or so. So the day had gotten warm. I would say warm enough that I had, noted it and pulled them down somewhere in between Pipeline and Twin Lakes Dam. So somewhere, say between 25 and 30 miles. Or so.
Yep, it was a warm one. We could tell even standing out there, standing still, like, it's getting warm out here, and it got warm pretty fast. Okay, so take us.
Yeah, you really feel the heat really feel the heat through the thin air. It's amazing how your thermometer says, well, it's only 74 degrees, and you're like, well, it feels a lot warmer.
Well, you got one shot at Little Stinker this year and one shot at the single track, so. That was it, huh?
Just one of each. And they were both in a good shape, fun shape, had no problems with either of them. Honestly, thanks to the waves, there was no bunching up at those points. And because both of those are normally kind of choke points, right? That you either wind up holding back someone in the single track or you wind up being held back by someone. I was neither in this. I had, I was free to fly. Honestly, the whole day, I never felt like I was alone, except for on that one brief spot near the fish hatchery. But I also was never feeling like I was crowded, and there has been that sense before. So I got into Twin Lake Dam inbound at 1 hour and 46, which is still a classic sub-9 pace. Still not allowing myself to buy it, but I got that classic surge of adrenaline from all of the energy at Twin Lakes Dam. I was expecting there to be fewer people there, but it felt like there was just as much excitement. And if not as many people as normal, almost as many people as normal, and all the enthusiasm and excitement that you expect to see there.
And I think you mean to say 2 hour 46, because 1 hour 46 at Twin Lakes Dam would be... would put you on pace to break Alvin Licata's record, I believe.
Yeah. Well, math is never my strong suit. So yes, thank you. That would be 2 hours and 46 minutes. Otherwise, I would have actually gone back in time using my magical DeLorean-styled mountain bike. But yeah, so I was on a 9-hour pace, 2 hours 46 in, and then I was actually getting excited about something that was pretty obscure. And that was the fact that I was looking like I was going to hit my prediction for arriving at the Twin Lake Dam alternate within 1 minute of my predicted time. You remember why I cared about that?
Yes, I do. This is all to do with pride and nothing to do with racing. When we had our little racer meeting Thursday night, we did it. Mm-hmm. We sat down with the three of you, Melissa, Lisa, and yourself, and we asked you, what time do you think you will be at Twin Lakes Dam alternate? And all three of you, even though you were all three starting in different corrals and had different pacing strategies, all three of you said 9:30. That all three of you would be arriving at the same hour of the day, which would have made for an interesting feed, 9:30, but we knew that was impossible.
But only one of us.
But one of you had to be the winner. Only one of you could be the winner of this predictive thing, this Leadville prediction, and that was you. You nailed it. 9:30 is when you got there.
If the guy who spends hour upon hour of recording obsessively about this race was not the guy who knew when he would be getting in, then maybe the audience would have a problem, right? But I will say that, I was very proud of nailing my predicted time, although I still was not buying that I was going to get a sub 9. And then I was proud of my very smart, very effective feed zone strategy, which is having very smart, fast type A people take care of me. I don't know if you might know who these two people are who are like that.
If this podcast were on YouTube or a visual, people could see the stack of papers I'm holding in my hands right now. These are all the notes Mrs. Hottie and I took to pull off the feed.
15 pages, I would say.
Yeah, there are. Now, look, I rewrote my notes just to kind of ingrain them in my head. But that's probably, I'm not kidding, folks. There's like 12 pages here, I think, of notes we took to pull off our
pages.
Feeds. Now, Melissa's is 1 page because she wanted a hand up in both directions. Yeah, but you and Lisa are a little more involved with the feeds. We did, but this is why we write them down, to make sure that they get pulled off.
Yeah, and I was very interested, actually, in Melissa's time because, and we'll get into this in another episode, but she has gone from being someone with whom I finished. We actually crossed, hand in hand the finish line in 2019 together with a 8:38. She was shooting for a sub 8 hour finish time this year. She has really become a breakout. And
I'll have to say, your request for her time threw me. Like we were prepared for everything else. Your electrolyte capsules, the chews, the change to the U-Sweet pack. We were all ready for that. But when you came in, you started asking me, what's Melissa's time? What's her time? And all I had her placing. I knew where she was in the field, and I knew how far she was behind the leader, but I didn't know her time. I had not written it down. And so it threw me. I'm like, what is he worried about her time for? She's running top 7 right now. So I made sure that is on the return. I had her exact time so I could give that to you when you came in. But you were certainly distracted by her efforts on the day.
Well, I was super excited to see. I mean, a sub 8 is something that I've always dreamed about, but have never been even close to nailing. So knowing that she had a very legitimate shot at finishing that fast, it mattered to me. And I wasn't really to be honest, I didn't care about how other women in the field were doing. I cared about how she was doing. So that said, you did give me a number, and I don't even remember what the number is. I just remember that for the next hour, as I was climbing up Columbine, I wasn't thinking about how I was doing. I was trying to figure out the math of what the time you had given me, and because you gave me a time of day versus her start time, and I was trying to figure it out, and I was like, I just couldn't get it. Brain, 11,000 feet, the two don't go well together. So I did, however, start worrying as I got closer to the top, less about her and more about my turnaround time. 4:30 has always sort of been my magic sub-9 turnaround number. And I was worried that I was going to miss it.
We weren't. Down at Twin Lakes Alternate, I knew you were in good shape. What caused you to question your abilities at this point?
Well, yeah, I was going up and I was looking at it, and I was getting really close to 4 hours and 30 minutes. And frankly, even though we had spent episode after episode talking about this new turnaround location, in my own head, in race, in the moment of the race, I still had the turnaround point at the old spot.
Yeah, you'd forgotten that the course owed you something already because you'd done the longer section.
Exactly.
The course had taken something away from you. It had not returned what it owed you yet.
Yep. But in the moment of the race, I completely did not understand that. And so guess what my turnaround time?
4:30, I would guess.
Yes, 4:30 on the nose. Once again, I'm in a great textbook sub-9 position. I am not believing it. I look at 4:30, I look at my GPS as I'm turning around, have a gel at the beginning of, because I never stopped. I grabbed a gel from a volunteer as I crossed the timing mat, grabbed another gel from a volunteer as I came around the triangle. And I'm thinking to myself, I need to now get a negative split, and I never get a negative split in this race. I am doomed. I am thinking I am not going to finish under 9 hours. I am really bad. I am hard on myself. Race.
And again, you've forgotten that the course is going to give you back time on the return. It's right there. You're getting some right there. You're going to miss the single track. So you've got time in the bank at this point.
Yeah, and you would think that as someone who obsesses over this race, probably more than 90% of the people who do this race, that would have been perfectly clear in my head. That said, I had a ball on the way down, Hottie. I was yelling at folks in a good way, not get out of the way, but hey, you're doing it, you're almost there. Yelling huzzah, whooping. I seen people that I know, not caring whether it was someone I know or not. Literally, and I mean quite literally, yelling myself hoarse, so that by the next time I saw you, my voice was kind of raspy. But I remembered as I was doing that, obviously can't do math anymore, but I remember a point that Payson made on this show a couple of episodes back where he was saying, you put some good energy into this race and it comes back to you. And he was talking about volunteers, but he was also talking about racers. And that has been something that I've always liked about this race, people yelling for each other, encouraging each other. And Payson was more than right. I got back so much more energy than I gave. It was just awesome. The sort of the goodwill and the encouragement that I was hearing and seeing from racer to racer on this race.
Yep. Even grizzled pros will show up at that race thinking they're all tough and they've seen it all and nothing can affect me and, I don't need encouragement. And they walk away saying the same thing. Like, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
A lot of it's due to the format. The Outback format just lends itself to this cheerleading aspect, which is terrific, but it could happen anywhere. It's just that Leadville's got it. I mean, and it sticks with it, and it's there every year. You're going to get it, and you're going to give it back.
It was so special. It really was. And I want to say that part of the reason I was able to cheer and yell for folks is because I was feeling quite literally great. And that has a lot to do with the fact that I was able to feel my hands. That is not always the case on my way down Columbine. Numbness has been a problem for me in my right hand for a long time on long descents. And I know that's incredibly common with other mountain bikers as well, but this year it was not a problem. And I am going to attribute that, at least partially, to my new Envy M6 bar. The M6 is Envy's widest bar, and it fits my riding style, both for climbing and for descending really well. It just fits. And Envy's expertise in carbon layup, it gave me confidence in my bike, and it is really nicely tuned for, as they say, this dream combination of response, compliance, and high strength. And that translated in my race in real life to a little bit less buzz coming through the bar and up my arms. And I just felt great the whole day.
Yeah, a carbon in the right places is a great thing. Look, I ride steel bikes now. I love steel bikes. Sarah Sturm finished, second this year at Leadville. She was on an alloy frame, on an aluminum frame, God forbid. But she did have carbon bars, and I have carbon bars.
Yeah.
And carbon in the right places, in fact, carbon bars themselves have been a revelation, I think, in the area of road biking and mountain biking. Fatty and I are both big fans of the M5 and the M6 bars. They provide excellent vibration damping and response, making them perfect for long days on epic terrain like the LT100. And for those who need or want a 780 millimeter bar, you can cut it down to as narrow as 740. So if you don't like that wider length, you can trim them and you can go as narrow as 740.
Yeah, and that's actually more or less what I've done for the Hammer, who rides with an M5 bar cut down to 750 millimeters. It's perfect for her.
Whatever the rise, sweep, and width of your fit, Envy's got you covered. Check out their bar, stems, wheels, post over at Envy. That's ENVE.com.
So I am back now at the Twin Lake Dam alternate. I am 60 miles into the race, and guess what time I got in?
The time you predicted?
Exactly 5 hours. The time that I wrote down on your notes. You can check them. You've still got them. And I want to make real clear that I was so appreciative of not just you and Mrs. Hottie delivering on what you said you would do, but adapting your crewing for me as we got into Twin Lake Dam. As I got into Twin Lake Dam inbound, the day was heating up, and it was getting hot, and Mrs. Hottie checked my jersey pocket, and she noticed I still had four gels in there, and she said to me, "You're not eating enough." And I did not, and I think you said, and you need to. It's hot out there. I'm going to put a second bottle in your cage so that you have plenty to drink. And I love that you two were looking at how much I was eating, how much I was drinking, and taking care of me. But I didn't say this at the time because there was no time. You know, you crewed in 1 minute or less both times I saw you. But I was actually right on schedule with my nutrition when I rolled in at Twin Lake Dam outbound. Which I got to right at 3 hours in the race again. You sent me out with 6 gels, which is how many I had asked for. I had one gel exactly 3 hours and 30 minutes into the race, exactly 4 hours into the race, and then literally at 4:30 on the nose when I crossed the Columbine turnaround mat. A volunteer gave me a goo gel hand up. I sucked it down. I went around the Triangle Aid Station, sucked another gel down, and preloading for knowing that I wasn't going to be able to eat for a little while, and I headed on down. So started with 6, ate 4, but of course still had 4 in my pocket when I got back in.
And at this time, when you came inbound, Twin Lakes alternate, I had Melissa's exact time for you, so you knew exactly her data. I didn't have her power numbers or her heart rate for you, but you had the time and her placing, and all was right in the world as far as that's concerned. Our game time decisions, yeah, again, we felt the heat sitting out there at Twin Lakes alternate. We could tell it was getting warm. We could see other riders struggling with hydration and cramping. By this time, we had our neighbors who were crewing next to us. One of their riders had to be pulled out because he didn't make the time because he got off on nutrition a little bit. Another rider came off the mountain and had to pull because he was struggling. So we knew we had to make some adjustments to your feeding strategies. For you got an extra bottle. I just thought, I know he wants one bottle. It was in your plan to take one bottle out the pipeline inbound. So the return there. And that's normally a great strategy. You shouldn't need any more than that, but it was just getting too warm. For Lisa, what we did, and this is going into your future notes, Fatty, for both of you, whether or not we know it's going to be hot, and that is a wet washcloth on her neck. Seemed to do the trick for her. She really loved that. We dug out something. We had something in there that was semi-clean that we were able to dunk in some ice water, put that on her neck. We said, just ride with it and throw it at a volunteer somewhere down the road. So the couple little things like that, when the day starts changing, it can be really nice on your rider. It can really help them push forward.
Yeah, and absolutely. You two were just magnificent at crewing, and we need to do an episode, and we've got notes on this for season 5 to have a Hottie and Mrs. Hottie teach you how to crew episode. That is, I think, going to be one of the iconic episodes of the show. But the reason I want to go back to why I went up Columbine with 6 gels when I expected to only be using, 4 of them, so brought 2 extra gels with me, is because I didn't really know for sure that I was going to have a good day up there. So I trained with Goo and Morton's the whole spring and summer, knowing that I'd be packing Morton's for some of the race, grabbing Goo hand-ups at the top, and that this way I would for sure, if I had a bad day, still have enough food to make it. So I learned something from the Feed Fails episode, or the Feed Fails segments that we had during the year. So I'm still learning from this podcast too, and kudos to the Feed for helping us with for all of our nutrition needs.
Thanks again to the Feed for their participation with our ride as well. They were very generous showing up there. I think we told the story about Brandon. Poor Brandon had a tough day on his Leadville day, but he'll be back. He'll be back in the Leadville Trail 100.
Yeah, I look forward to having him there. Meantime, whether right now and you are training for something else or next year, be sure to go to thefeed.com/Leadville to sign up for a 15% discount on all your orders. So now I'm at the private property reroute. And the first time I went through, on the way out, I felt like it was fast. Like I just rolled right through it. This time the day was warming up. I was getting some fatigue. So the reroute felt a little bit longer. And while I had thought during the pre-riding the week before that this single track workaround was going to be a real time saver, on race day, it also was feeling hot and dusty and slow. And I realized now in retrospect, I was just getting tired. I was thinking, man, this is a lot harder than I expected it to be based on the pre-ride. Oh, it turns out that after 65 miles of riding that things are a little bit harder to do. So I got into Pipeline about 6 hours, 9 minutes into the race, looking at my time splits here based on the race map. I made note of that, and it made me anxious, Hottie, because I have always kind of had this rule of thumb that if you pull into the Pipeline aid station about, at 6 hours, that's kind of the magic number if you want to finish under 9 hours. And it was past that. And so I was a little bit freaked out. This time, though, I did see my kids. And so I was happy to see them. Blake and my kids and Jeff was there. They took great care of me. They had me off in seconds, which, that was my last aid station stop of the day. I think I would love to be able to take a look at the numbers. I don't think that I put a foot down for more than, I would say, 2.5 minutes total during the entirety of Leadville 100.
Strava should take care of that for you. Don't they have a moving time and a rolling time?
I believe they do, and I have not taken a look at that. I will look at that. We got to put that in the show notes. As obsessive as we are, you would think that I know, but I have not looked that up yet.
I can tell you that the stops went rapidly. Last year, 2019, we did time them. And I know we were under a minute back then. That didn't feel like anything longer than a minute both times in and out of Twin Lakes. And I'm sure it was the same at Pipeline.
Yeah, no question. Time has a way of distorting during this race, no question. But I really don't think I was sitting or I never swung a leg over the bike and tried to spend less than a minute total at each stop. So out of Pipeline, one last time, I managed to put together a stellar riding group on the pavement because I was riding smart this day. It started with me, caught one guy. He and I caught another couple people, And before long, we had a good group on the pavement of, I would say, about 7 people, including one guy who was not one of those big guys that you expect to kind of put on a time trialing clinic. He was a normal, like mountain biker looking guy who was just taking super long, difficult pulls. And I mean, it was great for my race for him to go ahead and be killing himself like this, but he was putting a lot of effort into other people's success as opposed to his own, especially when you're considering that he is about to go up the power line.
And long poles can actually hurt the group as a whole too. You may be sitting back there going,
Sure.
oh yeah, this guy's doing all the work, I'll just sit here. But the person at the front, their power is going to wane. And at some point, they're going to be going slower than you would otherwise be going had you just gone up there and taken your own pole. So it's a tough one. It's a hard decision. I get it. You're comfortable back there. Oh, let that guy kill himself, whatever, But the real answer probably is, the real solution is to say something to that person. Hey, why don't you peel off? We'll all kind of work together here, share the workload. And as a group, we will go faster. And
I did actually do that. The first time he did that, it wasn't a pattern. The second time, it was clear that he was, being a good guy, but being, harmful to himself and probably to us as well. So I told him, I said, you are clearly a very strong racer. First, start with a nice little compliment. And then I said, but you are killing yourself for the sake of this group. Take shorter pulls and we'll get to the power line with something left in our legs for hopefully a sub 9. Because I was starting to believe that a sub 9 would be possible. So at the fish hatchery, there was the results of what I will call the best GoFundMe ever. Susie Schmidt had crowdfunded buying a lot of little cans of Coke and was doing hand-ups to raisers, cold cans of Coke. And I put my hand out for one, and, just with this expectation of, there's nothing like a Coke on a hot day, 2/3 of your way into a ride. I was so excited, and I absolutely fumbled it, Hadi. Completely screwed up the catch. I think I punched it is what wound up happening. I punched the can of Coke and with just, bad coordination. I have no excuse. Anyway, I knocked it so it spun up my arm over my right shoulder. And I think I imagine it pinwheeling and spraying Coke all over everyone who is still in this group with me, as well as the good folks who are handing up Coke. So I was an absolute disaster, and I sent a little apology to Susie afterward for hosing everyone in the vicinity with a little can of Coke. Still really appreciated the thought. Wish I would have had some of the Coke itself. So that's it. I walked up the first part of the power line. I think I mostly rode the rest. This year, unlike the last time, 2019 when we did it, I wasn't making a point of seeing if I could ride everything. I know that I'm not that strong, not that trained this year. And honestly, pushing your bike for a minute doesn't do terrible things to your total average. And I don't think that it made me appreciably slower up that first half mile of the power line than when I rode.
Some people can arguably walk as fast as they could ride that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some people just can't ride it at all. It's just out of the question. For those who can, it's a toss-up. I mean, that thing is so steep. If it feels better to walk it, choose walking, right?
Yeah. Ask yourself the question, is this where I want to burn a match? Sometimes the answer is yes. And if so, Godspeed. For me, the answer has been yes once. Usually it is not. This time it was not. And frankly, it felt good to stretch my calves with that steep and different feeling sort of march for a little while. As I'm doing this march, I am asking myself this question: am I going to finish under 9 hours? I honestly still did not know. What a crazy question to just mull over. But I wasn't angry at myself. I wasn't thinking, if I get more than 9 hours, I'm not going to be happy with the day. I was having the best day ever. I was really happy, loving being around these people. The Leadville 100 racers are my tribe. And it was really awesome to spend a day in the company of people who are every bit as crazy about this race as I am. So I don't know if I'm finishing under 9 hours. Very interested, but not terribly concerned. People asked me many, many times during the day as we are riding together, and you would think that I would have a good answer for them. Are we going to finish under 9 hours? And I always want to be encouraging. I'd say, yeah, I think we have a chance. I think we might. I don't know for sure. So,
well, that group you were in, that section right there, that is the group. Mm-hmm. The collective you there are on the cusp. Yep. You're the only ones in that position on the entire race course. You are the "Are we going to break 9" group at that point.
Oh yeah, and so yeah, I know that everyone is wondering the exact same thing I am, and we're the sub 9 hopefuls. And I mean, it's kind of nice to know that it's like everyone is really, really putting everything out there, knowing that if they succeed, they're going to get a big buckle. If they don't succeed, they're still going to finish the race. And that is a big thing. But, you know, there's an unfinished business feeling to it if you don't quite get that. Sugar Loaf was, as I mentioned, it was pretty clean on the way up. I had such a fun time heading down Sugar Loaf this time. Once again, this isn't a second ad read for Envy, but my hands just felt good. And it's, you know, the fit on the bike was fantastic. Really loving how I am feeling, and that I am not necessarily sore. I'm just enjoying mountain biking 7.5 hours into a ride. And that is kind of a crazy feeling, but I was having such a good day. Hagerman's was smooth enough, in fact, that I was able to, you know, pull out a gel and eat it without worrying too much about the brake pumps. And that's actually where, for me at least, in the moment, the funniest thing of the day happened. So I am bombing down, and I see a person off to the right side of the road, and he has stopped. And as I get close, and as I pass him, I can see that he has his tire off of his bike, and he yells, "Do you have a tube?" And this wasn't necessarily race smart, but I had received so much from everyone on the course that day in terms of kindness and just good energy that there was no way I wasn't going to stop. So I grabbed a couple handfuls of brake, skid to a stop, but I'm going to make him do most of the work. I'm not going to turn around and ride back up to him because that's uphill. I said, "Run up to me." And he does. He sprints to me. So, I mean, this is a guy who's faster than me, or he wouldn't be ahead of me. But he sprints up to me, and the two of us commence to try to unzip the seat pack I have on my bike. And we are both exhausted and shaking and full of caffeine and adrenaline, and neither of the two of us is successful at unzipping this seat pack for probably, I mean, it felt like a long time. Probably it was 3 seconds. But finally, I just, I say, let go. And I reach back, and I'm still straddling my bike. I never swing my leg off of the bike during this whole thing. So I'm pivoted around, unzip the thing, and I reach in, and I get my tube out, and I give it to him. And at this point, I have only one tube. So I am saying, "Here, you get a tube, and I hopefully will not get a flat in the final 15 miles of the race." But the tube I give him is, and this is where it got very funny. It was not just a Tubolito tube, but a Tubolito Ultralight, which is, where, if you imagine a normal 29-inch butyl tube being about the size of your fist, this thing is more the size of your finger, right? It is. Those things are unimaginably tiny. You've seen them before, right? They are just like, they're ridiculously small, but they're still really good tubes. And it's in its original packaging, which keeps it from, having the seat pack rub a hole into it. And so I hand it to him, and it looks like I'm giving him a little snack or something, like I'm giving him some fruit snacks. It is that small. And he's like, "What is this?" I said, "It's your tube." And he's like, this isn't a tube. I said, this is a tube. And he's like, what size is the tube? I said, it's a 29-inch tube. And he cannot wrap his mind around the fact that I had just given him something that was impossibly small. But he believes me, and he starts running back to his bike, and I yell, come back here and zip up my pack. And he actually did. I was just joking, but he did. He zipped up the pack, and away I go. I did not get a flat, full disclosure. So everything worked out. And I feel like I've made a little bit of a karma deposit in my mountain biking here.
And that came at no small price. Those 2 Bolita ultralights are not cheap, by the way, too, folks. So you left a little change out there on the Leadville course, or it's rolling around in somebody's tire at this point.
They are not cheap, but and I was still not really necessarily believing that the most expensive thing I was giving him was a tube. I thought there was a reasonable chance that I was giving him my 9-hour finish. Because I thought, what if I'm spending 2 minutes here giving this guy, stopped and giving this guy a tube. What if I finish in 9:01? And it was a legit possibility, but I don't know. I'm glad I did. And I'm pretty sure that if I had got a flat, that someone would have stopped and given me a tube as well. So I was super happy that I was able to help this guy, and also super happy that I did not get a flat in the final part of the ride.
Okay, so Hagerman, May Queen, and then my least favorite part of the course, the climb to Carter up the pavement. How are we doing here?
I know you hate that, but it's one of my favorite parts of the day. You know that I love to put in an unusually large gear, stand up, and just really row. That seems to be if I have a superpower, that would be my superpower. And I am passing people. I am feeling good. There is a little station that Garmin had set up where they were handing out yet more little cans of Coke. This time I get one. I'm going slow enough that I have no trouble with the handoff whatsoever, which is nice. And I also yelled to him, I love my Garmin 1030 Plus. And so, which I in fact do. And he looked at me kind of quizzically, and I thought, I bet he's a volunteer. He probably doesn't even know what that is. But I do in fact love my Garmin 1030 Plus. It is a good GPS. If I get to Carter at about, it's 92 miles into the race, and I look down and I see that I am 7 hours and 52 minutes into this race. And I tell the racer who is right beside me, and another rider who I think I had seen him several times during the day, but I'm at this point, I'm cross-eyed and crazy. So I yell at him, I think we're going to do this. If we can be smart and safe and fast, we can do this. We are a sub-9 lock. And he looks at me, and I will never forget the way he said this. He said, you just gave me so much hope. And I guess he had not really understood that this was it. If he would ride well, he had a sub-9. And I was super excited that he was that excited about it. He flies on ahead. I mean, that news was all he needed. I did not see him for the rest of the race. I probably finished an hour and a half before I did. He broke the sound barrier. It was incredible watching him just take off. So from there, it was a defense game for me. I dial it back on the downhill. I pour it on in the flats and the climbs, and it worked. 8 hours, 43 minutes is my finish time, which is about 5 minutes slower than my last time, 2019. But truly, I will say about 15 minutes smarter than I have ever raced it. Working with other people and dialing it back when I needed to. Would I have got sub-9 otherwise? I don't think so, or it would have been really close. I raced smart and had an amazing and fun Leadville.
Yeah, but for some reason, you didn't have the feel of the sub-9 till late in the game. I mean, 8:43 is comfortably a sub-9. It wasn't like you were 8:58. You were 8:43. That's comfortably in. You had time to spare. You obviously, a flat would have killed your day because you didn't have a tube at this point. But if something else had gone wrong, you probably could have dealt with that. A cramp, you could probably pull over. And so somewhere you got your feel got thrown off here. Are you normally bad with feel on this course?
I'm terrible at feel on this course. I know how everyone else is doing and simply have a difficult time letting myself believe that I am doing well. My fastest time, when I got the 8 hours and 12 minutes in Leadville, I forget exactly what year. I think 2011. Maybe 2015. I can't remember the exact year. I did not let myself believe that I was doing well until I was very late in the race. It is difficult for me to give myself, I guess, permission to believe that I am having a good day. That said, the only way I would ever have, during this day, have believed that I was not having a good day was in terms of time, in terms of being with people, being on the course, having the time of my life, honestly. I don't think it's ever been quite like this. I was just so happy and having so much fun out there.
Yeah, I think it's proof too. You prove the Nate Whitman theory, and that is, I mean, look, Nate's a fantastic rider. He's very fast. But Nate uses his head as well as anybody as I can think of. And I think you're in the same class of rider at this point. Like coming in, you had doubts about your fitness. I mean, you kind of always express that, oh, I'm too heavy. I don't know how well I'm going to do, blah, blah, blah. But in the end, what you have is 22 years or now 23 years of knowledge of completing this race. And that plays so well. Nate is a 19-time finisher, and he knows now when he lines it up, here's what I need to do. Here's what I need to be. Here's how I need to work with other people, when I need to work with other people. Here's where I need to burn matches. All that stuff comes into play. I think a lot of veterans can tell this story, Fatty. I mean, not just in the mountain biking world. I think we see it in road racing. Sorry about that. Alejandro Valverde. He's a 40-year-old rider. Now, he had a tough welter there. He crashed out. His career may be done, but he was still winning races into his 40s against guys who were in their early 20s. And why? Because he's got the smarts. He's seen all these courses so many times that now he knows. He knows the rhythm. He knows where to be, what to do, what to eat the night before, how early he needs to get up. All that stuff is like routine, and it just comes right into play for you come race day, whether or not you have the fitness for 9 hours, sub 9 or not. That will always go to the start line with you.
Yeah, and I really definitely use that, and it made me think toward the end of the day. It was like, well, what if I brought all of this, I guess, accumulated wisdom in this one little thing? I have such narrow yet deep wisdom at this point on this race. What if I brought a ton of extra fitness in and also raced smart and raced happy? What could my race be like then? Maybe 2022 will be the year that I find that out. My enthusiasm for this race, I would say, is stronger than ever. So super excited. And I am also excited to be able to now say that I have raced and finished 23 times, 8 of those times under 9 hours.
There's something to be said there. That is excellent work. Congratulations to you. Congratulations to your family, too. All of the 3 of you put in great days there.
Thanks.
It's good to be there by your side as you did that. Good to watch you eat watermelon at the end of the day, too, and a lot of it. That was a lot of fun. Great telling stories around the fire afterwards, too, at the Fatty house. So a lot of fun. Great weekend. Fatty, I got back here. I was back here 2 days. I wanted to be back. I wanted to be back in Leadville. I was dreaming of crewing maybe the run, something. So I'm ready to go back, too, in whatever form that may be. And I think, I agree. I think you've got some time on that course still. I think there's still some stuff out there for you. There's 25 finishes, obviously, which is a big deal. And I think there's why not say it? There could be a best time for you out there still. You never know. You just never know. With your knowledge, you never know.
Wouldn't that be amazing at age 56 to put in a sub 8 time? I'm not saying that is the theme for the 2022 season of the Leadville podcast, but I think that it is worth thinking about that there are ways anyone can be faster and race happy and race intense. And I think that we are going to, we're going to bring this show back and have a pretty exciting next season, as we all still have a lot to learn.
We'll make Fatty faster, and hopefully the rest of you too. I mean, you'll learn something.
Wouldn't mind.
learned something through Fatty's process. Let's just say that. All right, let's wrap this episode, but not the season. We'll be back with more stories because, who has got a ton to tell you? We got a lot more folks. We hope to talk to you and tell you about the Leadville Trail 100.
Yeah, we still have stories to tell, not just about this race, other races, lots of stories. For now, you can hear from Hadi on social media. I am also on social media. Hadi is a big Instagram user at Michael Hodden. I am on Twitter at Fat Cyclist. Of course, we're both on Facebook, the Leadville 100 mountain bike participants page. If you want to have a little more involved of a conversation, join our Slack channel, and you will find a link to that at Leadville100podcast.com.
And if you like the show, go to wherever you listen. Give us a 5-star rating. Write a review, please. That always helps. Apple Podcasts is one place you can do that. To find all the ways to find this show, it is pod.link/Leadville.
Yeah. So good luck in your recovery and your training. Thanks for listening. And we will see you amazingly soon at the 2022 starting line.
Riders, you're off in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Go get 'em!